Hello again, college football fans. It is Sunday, October 5th, 2023. We just had week 10 yesterday. It's a beautiful afternoon here in Alabama, and it's even more beautiful because Alabama has defeated LSU. They remain undefeated in the SEC, and they are one win away, which will occur against Kentucky and Auburn, both on the road, unfortunately, from securing that SEC Western Division Championship and going to Atlanta to face probably Georgia in the SEC Championship game, which was really the goal all along. I think, national championship is always on the table for Alabama as long as Nick Saban is there. But realistic fans, I believe, early in the season, coming into the season with a new coordinator and a new quarterback and all those sort of things, what we were really hoping for is just to get back to Atlanta, to beat Auburn as always. I mean, that's always, for old school, hardcore Alabama fans, I think that's always one of the number one goals, and it certainly is for me this year especially because of the 4 in a row aspect of it, which we've already talked about a little bit on this channel. It's a huge win, but still work to do. Still, Ole Miss is still mathematically in the mix. If Alabama drops both of those games, Alabama would have to drop both of those games, and Ole Miss would have to win out, including beating Georgia. So the odds are stacked pretty highly against Ole Miss, but they're mathematically still in it. Alabama looked great. It's definitely, like Nick Saban said, probably the first complete game that Alabama has played all season long, but I don't want to get too complimentary of them and too giddy just yet, because LSU's defense was pretty stinky. I would just love to go ahead and start talking about how Jalen Milroe is becoming a legitimate elite quarterback, but I'm not ready to say that yet because LSU's the worst defense that we've played probably since South Florida, maybe Middle Tennessee. I think they're the worst conference defense. Mississippi State may be in that argument as well, but I just don't think it's a reason to get too excited about how good we looked in that ball game. Although, leading up to the game, there was so much anxiety in my mind that I'm very relieved today, and I still feel like that was a huge victory. And, some of the shine, I suppose, was taken off of it a little bit because Jaden Daniels got knocked out there towards the end. But we had already turned the tide of the game. We had already built a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter with him still clicking on all cylinders, and our defense was able to stop them a couple of times in a row, including that big interception tipped by Dallas Turner, and then the pick by Terrion Arnold, who had a great game, and he's having an amazing season. I think he's raised his level of play to the point where there's not that much separation in my mind between him and Kool-Aid McKinstry, and I don't know if anyone would have guessed that going into this season. Now, as far as college football playoffs, which I know everybody is going to turn their attention towards that now because LSU seemed like the biggest, only real legitimate hurdle left on Alabama's schedule, I'm not going to do that yet. First of all, we still haven't mathematically secured the West, and so many dominoes still have to fall, even though we're entering into the second week of November. There's still 5 undefeated Power 5 teams out there. There's a lot of one-loss teams. I'm not even going to count the number. We've got some hot rodders in the parking garage today. Things that I got right, things that I got wrong. The run game definitely showed up the way I'd hoped it would. They did do more of the RPO stuff, and Milroe looked incredible. The slow start did occur like I predicted. It wasn't as slow as I thought it would be. I thought that it would sort of be kind of a slow entire first half, which I'm really glad that it wasn't, because the worst could have happened if that had been the case. LSU's defensive injuries were, I think, the major key in this game, the major key that allowed Alabama to just control the tempo on offense, basically controlling the tempo of the game and allowing them to never get more than a touchdown behind and allowing them to build a multiple touchdown lead there at the end. The defensive turnover did help. I think Jaden getting knocked out probably helped more to make this a wider victory margin for Alabama, which I predicted to only be 3 points, but I think it probably would have been closer to that had Jaden been able to finish out the game. And more points were scored, which it went over the over-under, which I predicted would happen. It went, as a matter of fact, I think I predicted it to go even a little bit more over than it did, but nevertheless, if anybody had gone over, they would have won some money on that one. Special teams, I was wrong about. Will Reichert had his worst game in quite a while. It's kind of funny because last year he struggled against Tennessee and then righted the ship against LSU. And this year he had a phenomenal game at Tennessee and then has struggled against LSU. So hopefully he can get that turned around. I hope he gets some opportunities against Kentucky to get his mind right on that, because we know with kickers it can turn into sort of a jinxy kind of thing quickly with those guys. The shootout, I predicted that it probably would be more of a shootout in the third quarter and the second half, and it was more of a shootout in the first half. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with the fact that Jaden Daniels didn't see much of the fourth quarter. But like I said before, and like Saban said in the press conference, it was great to see the offensive line play probably their best game of the season. They had their best half last time against Tennessee, but their best full 60 minutes of a game they got yesterday in Tuscaloosa, and it was just a great thing to see. And it's going to be great to see where Alabama falls in the new college football playoff rankings. It's going to be great to see what we look like against Kentucky next week. That's going to be very interesting because that's a classic sort of a trap game scenario. Moving on to talk about the conference, in what seemingly was a wide open SEC that we heard a lot of during the first part of this season, has kind of turned out to be what everyone would have thought. I mean, I know a few people picked LSU to win the West going into this season, but most people, I think, would have picked an Alabama-Georgia SEC championship game, and the chances of that happening are overwhelming now. We did talk about going into the Texas A&M game and then going into the LSU game, how, you could look back on the season and think and may be able to say that would have been the sort of unofficial Western Division championship game. But now it's looking more like it is going to be Ole Miss. I got to give a tip of the hat to Lane Kiffin, because I did predict Ole Miss to lose to Texas A&M. I thought that Jimbo would pull one out. He wasn't able to do that in Oxford, and so Ole Miss may not wilt. Of course, they do have to go between the hedges next week, so that will be the true test of whether or not they're able to keep their name in the college football playoff mix, because I think right now you'd have to leave them in there. Obviously, a lot of things would have to happen in order for them to get in, but I don't think that they're out of that discussion just yet. So that's what it's looking like in the SEC right now. Missouri, was a good fight against Georgia. That game went pretty much like I predicted, and Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs are still the man, and what Ric Flair always said about that. Around the country, just to talk about some of those scenarios that we were talking about, dominoes falling, and going back on the theme that I talked about a couple videos back about how some of the national media types have been summoning chaos throughout this entire season, and usually I think what they mean by chaos is a lot of losses happening, a lot of upsets happening. But in my mind, the biggest scenario or the biggest chaos-inducing factor that could happen towards the end of this season is none of these teams lose. If Washington doesn't lose again, if Texas doesn't lose again. I mean, imagine this scenario: an undefeated Big Ten champion, an undefeated Florida State, which Florida State looks like right now they've got the clearest path to an undefeated season and a conference championship, which would all but guarantee them a spot in the college football playoff. But you got an undefeated Florida State, you might have an undefeated Big Ten champion, and then a one-loss Bama, one-loss Georgia, one-loss Texas, one-loss Oregon, one-loss Washington, one-loss either Michigan or Ohio State, or maybe a one-loss Penn State, although I guess a one-loss Penn State would be the Big Ten champion. But, that's just, that would be chaotic to the college football playoff committee to try and figure out who they're going to give the top 4 slots to in that sort of a scenario. But, more often than not, those things do take care of themselves. But we're getting pretty late in the season now, and we do still have the 5 undefeated teams and 8 or 9 or 7 or 8 or 9 Power 5 teams with only one loss. So, and a lot of those will play each other, so some of that will get taken care of automatically. But just suffice to say, we've still got a lot that needs to happen in order for the playoff picture to clear up at this point. Now, my top 4, I don't know if it's changed at all. I haven't looked. I can't remember what it was in the last video, and I have to look and see. But I still got Florida State, and I know I've had them number 1 the entire time I've been doing these. I don't see any reason to take them off. Ohio State I've got at number 2, Georgia at number 3, and Michigan at number 4. Now, looking forward to next week. Alabama at Kentucky. It's a morning game. It's on the road. Classic trap game after a pretty rough stretch of football dating all the way back to Ole Miss. I mean, I know Mississippi State and Arkansas were thrown in there, but they're still conference teams, and they're tough teams that we had to, it wasn't like playing some non-conference opponent, some Middle Tennessee or something like that. So Kentucky is not, they're maybe a little bit better, I suppose, this season than Arkansas and Mississippi State. Well, they just beat Mississippi State, decisively, but of course that's with a new quarterback and all that sort of stuff. So this is not a team that Alabama can take lightly, obviously, on the road and in the morning. I expect the defense to show up great again. Can Jalen and the offense continue their improvement and continue their consistent play, great play, really, for the last 6 quarters? The last half against Tennessee and the entire game against LSU, they played their best ball of the season. Something I forgot to mention earlier, it was good to see Jam Miller get some consequential carries and big reception in that LSU game. But just looking ahead to Kentucky, we've still got work to do at Alabama, and one more win will secure the West for us, and hopefully that will come in Lexington next week. Thanks for watching.